Hey everybody and welcome. I'm glad you're with us here again. We are doing this 3 times a week. Tuesday, Thursday, and Sundays at the exact same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So thank you very much for being here. And I see there's already a lot of people on the chat room already, the chat box already. Just want to go through a couple of things. Car Cost Canada is one of the main sponsors of the channel, and the car market is going to be going through an enormous amount of hurt. I read an article on CNBC today talking about how devastating this is for the auto industry because everything is shuttered. It's not like the recession where they were still making cars and selling them at big discounts. They're not making any cars. But that at one time will change. And when that transition happens, they're going to need to gin the market in order to get things moving. And you need to be prepared if you're in the market for a car. Anybody you know is in the market for a car in the next few months when all of this starts to unravel again. Unravel all the restrictions, you need to have all the ammunition you can get, which is knowing what the dealer paid for the car, any special incentives, rebates, discounted interest rates, all of that is available to you. Use the promo code MOTORMOUTH and you can get access to many more free searches, and it's great information. All right, I want to say hi to Rob, who's watching down in Washington State. The very first Patreon on the channel to subscribe at the $150 level. Now, before you freak out, the $150 level is to get what I'm doing here, but one-on-one. If you're considering shopping for a car and you want me to help answer some questions, helping to figure out which car you want, any kind of advice I can bestow upon you, you can do that for a one-time $150 fee at Patreon. If you can't find the Patreon link, just keep coming back to the channel. I'll get that for you. Other big news, Paris Auto Show, kaput. It's been canceled, or it's going to be heavily rejigged or whatever. But I got an email from the Paris Auto Show saying, and it's due in September, by the way, that it's not going to be going anytime soon. So there you go. All right, let's get into the questions and answers. This is from Craig. It says, love watching your channel. I recently bought a 2020 Audi S5. Nice car. What are your thoughts on this vehicle? Supposed to arrive in July. Do you think this will happen due to the virus closures? It may not, and it might, and it just might be worth revisiting your dealer and finding out about that. And the only reason why I bring it up is because if your car is going to be delayed until the fall, maybe you want to order a 2021 model, and they will start to be arriving at dealerships in the fall. So I know you're going to get a 2020 model supposedly in the summer. What's happening is because of all of the borders being sort of restricted in Europe and all the cross-border changes, and there's a supply chain that isn't working for car plants, they're shutting all the car plants. Plus, they don't want contamination in the factories. So that's the only thing I can say is if the car has already been made, when is it due? It's due in July? Probably not made yet. So it takes about 10 weeks for the car to be made and to be transferred and for you to get it roughly from Europe. So what I would say is might want to consider ordering a 2021. Just a thought. Oblivious 713. Hi, Andrea's husband. Nice one. I see what you did there. Will car manufacturers still invest in fuel-powered motorsport and hypercars? Seems like this is more bad publicity than good. I would miss it though. I don't see it going away entirely. I think there's a bigger story at play here than the environment. It's just that I think a lot of young people are just not into motorsport. I don't think it has anything to do with that. And you just look at the number of young people that are not into cars. I mean, there is a small group of mostly men, and you're watching channels like this, but the general population isn't as enthusiastic about cars as my generation was. I'm a Gen Xer, and the boomers before me, they were car crazy. I don't think there's as many people who are car crazy as there were in my generation and the baby boomers. So it's just a smaller amount, okay? I don't think it's going to go away entirely, though. Hey, Zach, Audi RS3 or S5 Sportback is an everyday car. I'm 24 years old, single, so I don't necessarily need the extra space, although nice to have. Well, this is very easy for you. Triggs 13, get the RS3. Come on, man. I mean, the S5 Sportback is a cool looking car, but the RS3 is on a whole different plane. That's a 5-cylinder, 400 horsepower machine that just has a unique sound and a very unique car. And I suggest that probably more desirable in the used market if you look after it. So a young guy, which one would I choose at 24 years old and single? RS3. Hey, there's going to be lots of time. Obviously, you make good money, whatever you do, or your family has lots of money. So there'll be lots of time to buy sedans, like regular sort of normal sedans. James saying, hey, Zach, always enjoy your show. Why don't more car manufacturers put in security features similar to Tesla's Sentry motor in their cars? With current software and hardware technology should be easy. Well, absolutely true. And I think that one of the things that infuriates me is that the cars nowadays have cameras. The cameras are there scanning the road, looking at street lamps, street signs, telling you on your head-up display that we're now in a 50-kilometer zone or 100-kilometer, whatever it is. The technology's already on the car. What would it take to have a hard drive buffering every 30 minutes or so, so if you ever got into an accident, you could go and show the insurance company and what have you. So the cameras and the technology is there. I mean, you can buy a crappy little dash cam from Best Buy and put that on, and if the car gets knocked, it has a motion sensor and will automatically turn on. So those sorts of Sentry features are available. Hell, your Ring doorbell, when somebody comes up and it senses motion by the front of your house, the camera starts recording. So yeah, the cars are available. For example, the first car that had the camera that I can ever remember from the factory was the C7 Corvette. And now you have that in high definition. It was only in 720p. So the new C8 has it in high definition. And it can be used for valet mode, recording what the valet does with the car. And it can be used as a dash cam. So those things are slowly changing. Hey, one thing somebody asked last week, kind of put me on the spot, and I couldn't think of any names off the top of my head about who does really good in car or in-dash technology when it comes to sound systems. And I have to say, one of the most impressive factory sound systems is in the Lincoln products. That's the Rebel audio system. It's optional, but if you ever get a chance to experience that in any of the Lincoln products, in my opinion, is head and shoulders above what a lot of other brands are doing. So that's one to consider. Maybe you want to put a comment as well and tell me what you think of in-car. What's your opinion on self-driving cars? I'm interested in the legality of the system was to have a glitch and be involved in an accident. Who would be at fault? Well, we're seeing that unravel with some people using the autopilot system from Tesla in situations where they shouldn't be. Some people claiming it's doing things that it's not supposed to do. But this is going to be the case for all brands. It's a real interesting situation. I don't know what the courts are, where the courts are going to land on all this kind of stuff. I think really, if you look at the fine print of what the manufacturers are basically telling us, is that you still have to be in control of your car. You can't just hand over driving operation to the car. You still have to have the ability to overtake the car at any time if something happens, which means you shouldn't be diverting your attention totally away. For example, with the Cadillac Super Cruise system that's first debuted in the CT6 and is going to be available in many more Cadillac cars, when you're driving along, even though you're not touching the steering wheel and you're not touching any of the controls and you're kind of just driving along with your arms on the armrest or maybe having a sip of your coffee, if you look away, even for a fraction of a second, the seat starts to vibrate and it tells you, you still need to be watching where you're going. And I think the better systems will be the ones that force you to keep your eyes on the road. Now, there's a little infrared camera on the steering wheel that looks at your eyes and it can tell if you're looking away. It's so sensitive that when you're driving, I drove from here in Vancouver down to Seattle for a Cadillac launch. It was last September for the XT4. I took a CT6 and I drove it pretty much the whole way down the I-5. And the only time this system did this sort of vibration thing was when I took a sip of my Starbucks and I put it back in the cup holder. That short period of time, the car was like, wait a second, you're not paying attention. Yeah, it's going to be a real issue to see who's at fault. Lots of court cases. You know lawyers, they love to get involved. Raul says, hey, Zach, what's your opinion of Volvo cars? One in particular you could recommend for a family vehicle. I have a Volvo that just arrived at my house yesterday. It's the S60 Polestar, the plug-in hybrid. It is a beautiful car, and you're going to see that on the channel on Saturday morning. So keep an eye out for that car. I really like the look of it. I like the size of it. I really like the V60 and the V90 cross country, the wagons that are raised up a little bit. Now the V90 is being discontinued, but there are probably still a few around. I really do like that. And the XC60 and the all of them actually, XC40, XC60, and XC90 are all very good cars when it comes to design. You're going to have a hard time finding vehicles that have better interior design, especially that XC40. So I'm not exactly sure what size you're looking at, but yeah, I really do like driving the Volvo cars. I'm always just a little bit hesitant though to recommending them over other brands because of their reliability scores are not at the same level as some of the others. And that's one thing that needs still to be proven out here over the years, that Volvo can continue to produce better and better cars. And when you look at them compared to some others, I don't think they're there yet. Sat says, will Skoda come to Canada? No, it's not going to come to Canada. It's a European brand made by the Volkswagen Group, the same way that Seat is a Southern European phenomenon and Skoda is a Northern European phenomenon. For those that are not aware, Volkswagen Group owns these sort of two smaller boutique companies that sell in Europe and other places as well. And I think that some of the sub-brands of the Volkswagen Group, where they take a Jetta or they take a Tiguan or they take a Golf and they turn it into a Skoda or they turn it into a Seat, I think some of those executions are actually better looking than the originals, which are the Volkswagens. Is it Skoda or Seat has the Kodiaq, which is the Tiguan. Some really nice looking cars. There's no room for building yet another dealer group, a dealer network. Look at FCA trying to build out a Fiat dealer network. Look at FCA trying to build out Alfa Romeo dealer network. It's very expensive and very hard to get dealers to put down big money to open up yet another brand, especially in the United States where Volkswagen isn't that strong. Volkswagen's strong in Canada, not strong in the United States. Bruce, can you explain the 911 naming? You nerds talk about this. This 917, etc., means nothing to most of us. We nod off. Okay, so there's the 911, which is kind of the name everybody knows, right? The 911 is also a Carrera, and that's a car that came. And interesting thing is, when you get into the GT cars, which are their high performance cars, like the GT3, the GT2, the GT3 RS, those kinds of cars, they go from being Carreras to 911s. It's very confusing. So the basic car is a 911. Can also be called a Carrera, Carrera 2, Carrera 4, Carrera 4S, Targa, GT cars. What you're probably referring to are the chassis numbers, okay? So the original cars were called the 911. Then they went into the 911 SC. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, they started changing the names of the cars, the chassis. So the first one was the 964. If you know any of those Singer Porsches that are made to look retro in California, they're about $400,000 or $500,000. They use a 964 as the donor car. From there, they went to the 993, which was the last of the air-cooled 911s or Carreras. I own two of those. I don't own them now. I have owned two of those. And then they went to the first water-cooled. That was called the 996. And then they went to the second water-cooled, which was the 997. Then they went to the last 911, which was called the 991. And now they've brought out the new one that just arrived this year, is called the 992. Doesn't mean anything. Just think of the 911 and the Carrera are pretty much the same thing. The chassis are where you get those funky names, okay? Other names. Hey, Zach, how are you doing? Which one do you think is more promising, electric vehicle or hydrogen vehicle? I think, you know, like grandma's quilt that she would have on the bed, it's all this patchwork made up of different things. I think that you are going to see more of that. There's going to be all kinds of different solutions. There's going to be hybrids, plug-in hybrids, hydrogen, and battery electric vehicles, depending on which part of the world. For example, in highly advanced countries like Norway, for example, which is a very small country with a very small population, they're focusing on battery electric because it's a rich country and they can afford to build infrastructure. You go to poorer countries where they can't afford to build all the electric infrastructure, hybrid cars are probably the way to go, and maybe some plug-in hybrids. So it's going to be a real mix and match of whatever is going to be needed. For some intercity driving, for example, delivery trucks, you know, those 5-ton cab-over trucks you see delivering stuff all around the city, those would be perfect candidates for hydrogen because you can fuel them quickly in the morning, you can drive them all day, they don't need to be plugged in, but they're pure electric when they're on the road. So it's going to be a patchwork in my opinion. Any news on the C8 Z06 or Z06? No, nothing yet. I mean, the regular one just went into production about 2 weeks before everything got shut down. So they probably had the assembly line going 2-3 weeks for mass produce of the new C8. And then everything got shut down. What you need to do is look at the product cadence of the C7, how soon after the Z06 was introduced after the first car was done, and you'll get an idea when they're going to introduce that. Hey, Zach, how will you rate the new Kia Seltos? I don't know. I haven't driven it yet. I had a chance to go to the launch down in Texas, but I was busy doing something else, and that got canceled. Where was I going to go? Geneva Motor Show. Yeah, I was supposed to go to the Geneva Motor Show and passed on the Kia Seltos, and then the Geneva Motor Show got canceled. When I get my hands on it, I will let you know. Hey, Zach, hope you're doing well. I'm considering getting a Macan S. Once this craziness is done, I plan to hang on to it for 8 years. Your thoughts on the long-term reliability, especially with oil leaks? Hey, listen, I'm not sure the Macan S. Fantastic product, by the way. Great engine. So the Macan S has the base Cayenne engine, but with more power. Porsche is a brand that has excellent reliability. It's a brand that you need to do the regular maintenance on and be kind of really religious about that. And I think that if you look after the car and maintain it properly, you should have no problems with it. And there's nothing guaranteed in life, of course, but you know, they produce a very, very high quality vehicle. Porsche ranks right at the very top with Lexus and Toyota and now Hyundai, Genesis, Kia, and Porsche, all stacked at the very top when it comes to reliability. What's your opinion of the Subaru Outback versus the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid? Thanks. Well, these are very different vehicles. The RAV4 is a classic compact utility, sits higher, and the Outback is a classic station wagon derived crossover. So one is a pure crossover, meaning it's a car. So the Subaru Outback started life as a legacy station wagon, and then they started lifting it up, putting cladding on it, and rebranding it as an Outback, and that has taken over. They used to sell the two cars together. I used to call one the dress shoe, that was the legacy, and then the cross trainer, or the running shoe, was the Outback. But it really is a station wagon. And the Toyota RAV4 is a classic compact utility. Very different execution. And because of that, they drive differently. One has more car-like handling and very quiet and smooth. The RAV4 Hybrid is very quiet and smooth, but you have to really decide which you like. The cargo space in the Outback will be longer, and the RAV4 may be a little bit taller. So one is a hybrid and one isn't. I don't know what else I can say other than that. You have to decide kind of what you want. Are you running after fuel economy, or are you looking for more utility? Hey, I just want to say hi to Jack Castles. He said he wanted to support the channel due to COVID-19. Thank you very much, Jack. Appreciate that. Yeah, somebody was asking, you know, about how they can support the channel when everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. So Patreon I just started, but you can also do, I think it's called Super Chat, Top Chat, Super Chat, and donate directly while we're doing these live chats. So Jack, thank you very much. What's your opinion? Hey, Zach, I wanted to know your opinion of the 2020 Honda Accord 2-liter versus the Acura TLX. Is there any benefit to choosing Acura TLX over the Accord? I have noticed the prices are similar depending on spec. Well, one big difference is that the Accord is only front-wheel drive, okay? The TLX you can get with all-wheel drive. One has the 10-speed automatic transmission, that's the Accord, and the TLX gets the 9-speed. Okay, so that's something you have to consider. I actually like the Accord better. Now, just because when you spec them out, they're similarly priced, doesn't mean that's the price you're going to pay, okay? I believe that with TLX, they're pretty aggressive with their options for financing and incentives. Same thing again. If you want to find out all the incentives, you want to go to carcostcanada.com, sign up, use Motormouth as the promo code. It opens up more searches for you, but that's one thing to consider. And I understand what you're saying is a fully equipped Accord is the same price as sort of a base model TLX, but they're not really comparable because you have to then start to equip the TLX. I personally like the Accord better. Hey Zach, is the Audi Q5 2-liter 2016 a reliable car to keep long term? What are the problems you know about? Nothing really specific. This is, in my opinion, one of the best small utilities on the market. It was always the car that I recommended to a lot of people looking at that sort of entry level, not entry level, but compact utility from a German brand. But I think that one of the things is that there's newer products that have come onto the market, like the new X3, I think is fantastic, yeah, especially when it comes to handling. One thing I want you to do is you're looking at a 2016 Q5. Consider looking at a new Q3. I'm not sure if you need the width and the extra length that you get in the Q5, because I truly believe that the Q3, the new Q3, is so good that if it was me and I was choosing between a Q5 and a Q3, I would get a really nicely equipped Q3 for less money often than the Q5. So I don't know of any specific things about reliability on that model. The great news is there's a web forum for pretty much every car available. So just type in Audi Q5 web forum, you will find it, and you will see a trend if there's something that is bubbling up about it. But the thing is, go in there if you're looking at a 16 and buy it from somebody that is offering it as a certified pre-owned vehicle. It's going to have an extra 2 years warranty, which gives you peace of mind. You can even lease them a used car. You can lease a used car through the dealer as well. And I call that the long-term test drive. Maybe you do a 2-year lease. If the car's been fine, you buy it out and keep it. But that's a good way to try it out for yourself. But if you're looking at a used Q5 versus a new Q3, that's something to consider. Wrangler upcoming deals. Will there be lower interest rates? I believe there's going to be lower interest rates. What have all of the central banks done in the world? They have cut the lending rates down to pretty much zero. And then, as you know, the car companies, they reduce the interest rates even more. So they buy down the interest rates. I would suspect probably, like so tomorrow's April 1. You're going to start to see in the next 4 or 5 days what all of the manufacturers' incentives are going to be. Trust me, there's people huddled in offices right now figuring out what kind of incentives they need to get people to buy cars in this down market. It might be 0% interest, it might be dollars on the hood, it might be extra warranty, it could be a combination of all of those things. That's why you need to have the ammunition. Go to carcostcanada.com, sign up, use the promo code Motormouth. It opens up more searches for you. It'll show you what the dealer paid, and it'll show you all of those time-sensitive specials, like how low the interest rates are. So typically what you want to do is not at the very beginning of the month, like I wouldn't do it tomorrow. Like you can sign up today, but not start to use those searches probably until next week. sort of next Monday is when we'll start to see what all of the incentives really are, because they change them every month. Every single month there's a new incentive, and they're going to get quite aggressive to get people to buy. Mike Shaw, hey Zach, sorry I got my question in late on Sunday. Android Auto, any word on if when Porsche will be making it an option? Having said that, their PCM I think is fantastic, 2019 Macan. It's interesting you bring this up because I actually was looking, because we have a Cayenne, to see if you can retrofit Android Auto into your head unit. Apparently you can. And I've seen videos. So if you go on YouTube, you're here on YouTube, type in retrofit Android Auto into a Cayenne or Macan, or just put in Porsche Communications Management System, PCM, and you see what comes up. It can be done. It's a bit of a hack, but it can be done. I don't think they're going to do it. I don't know why. I think it's kind of foolhardy. They say it's, not enough people use Android. Android is the #1 platform in the world. Most people think that Apple dominates. In many Western countries, Apple has a high percentage of share, but worldwide, I think Apple's share is less than 20%. The rest of the world runs on Android. So I'm an Android user. I've owned 4 Porsches, so I don't buy that whole story that people who use Androids don't buy Porsches, but I don't think they're going to do it. I really don't. BMW isn't doing it either. They're sticking with Apple only, but apparently there's a side hack. How is it acceptable for Toyota to sell you an ancient Tundra, 4Runner, etc. for big money because they're reliable, but the same logic doesn't work for their sedans? I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at. Toyota will continue to sell cars because they sell them. And I totally agree with you that their trucks are very old. They need to be redone. They know that. And some of their sedans need to be redone. On the Lexus side, for example, they need a new Lexus IS. How is it acceptable for Toyota to sell you an ancient Toyota 4Runner, etc. for big money because they're reliable, but the same logic doesn't work for their sedans? Well, people are buying SUVs. They're not buying cars. And people will buy a Toyota even though it's older and hasn't been updated, because they know when they go to sell it, they're going to get a lot of that money back. Look at the residual values of Toyota Tundras, for example. Truck's been out for a long time. It's not good on gas. It sucks fuel. Toyota 4Runner is another one, an ancient design really underneath. It's got that 4-liter engine that's just horrible on gas, but when you go to sell it, there's guys lined up outside your house to buy it. So the market decides. Then they're not buying sedans, and they're willing to pay top dollar for Toyota trucks. What auto mergers do you see as likely this year? Ford, Volkswagen, Subaru, Mazda? Thanks for what you do. Well, thanks, Daniel. Well, you're already starting to see some of those that you're talking about. Ford and Volkswagen have a joint venture to share small engines and vans. So Ford will be helping Volkswagen with like real utilities, like work vans and those sorts of things. And because Ford has a quite high concentration of transit vans around the world, and I think Volkswagen is going to benefit from that. And then Ford will benefit from Volkswagen when it comes to engine development, especially small engines. So that's how that's going to work. I think what you're going to see are more of these kinds of alliances. Subaru and Mazda are both now sort of following underneath Toyota. Toyota is the big dog. Toyota is one of the biggest car companies in the world, and one of the most important not only car companies, but businesses in Japan, period. And these other smaller brands are underneath them, to the point where Toyota is investing money in Mazda and Subaru, and giving them technology. And you're going to start to see that more and more, especially when car brands need electrification for certification for places that have zero emissions mandates. For example, I live in Canada. Quebec has a zero emission mandate. British Columbia has a zero emission mandate. Some of these smaller brands don't have the technology to do that, so they kind of basically license it from Toyota, and they're using the older technology. So I think what will happen typically is Toyota will have the newest, latest, like the Toyota RAV4 Prime, for example, and maybe the older hybrid systems will be shared They will still qualify for those zero emissions mandates, but I think that's how it's going to go. These alliances are what you're going to start to see. The FCA Peugeot one is probably going to go ahead. Maybe more alliances than out-and-out takeovers. My 2017 CRV will be over in July 2020. Should I extend the lease or should I replace it with another vehicle? Well, this really comes down to availability and what's out there. You can probably go, if this is with Honda Canada, I don't know where you're leasing it from, but you can probably go to them due to the circumstances and say, I want to get a 2021 model. They're not going to be out yet. Can I extend my lease for 3 or 4 months and order one? You could do that. The July is not a good time to be rolling over a lease because you're rolling over into the last model year. Most model years start in the fall. So extending your lease by 3 or 4 months into September or October isn't a bad idea anyway, because every time your lease comes due, it'll always be for that next model year. So that's something to consider. So it really comes up to your situation. It's certainly something to consider. It doesn't hurt to ask. But if you really need a new car, there will be good deals out there. What are your thoughts on the Blazer RS? Do you like that more than the equivalent Edge ST? Haven't driven it yet, so I have to wait and see. First of all, the Edge ST I didn't like. Didn't like it at all. I thought it was a real sort of not very well executed performance utility vehicle. They're trying to take an old platform and shoe in new sort of performance stuff, and it didn't work. The Explorer ST, that's a totally different thing with a better engine and especially better transmission. So that's the big problem I had with the 4 Edge STs. The transmission was really laggy. You can watch the video. I changed gears and it was like 1/1000, 2/1000. Then it would change gears. That's not performance material at all. When looking at a used EV 2015-16, how does one justify the difference between the EV and non-EV version of cars and the difference in price, like Kia Soul EV versus regular Soul, same as Nissan Leaf versus Sentra? I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about when looking at used. So I'm not sure what you're saying. Have the electric cars depreciated to the point? I'm not sure exactly. Please write again. Don't know what you mean. Hey Zach, how are you spending your days during this home phase? Well, I'm trying to keep busy producing videos. Today, I shot the exteriors of the Volvo I got yesterday because it was not raining or anything today, and it was a bit cloudy, so it was good for taking exterior footage. I did the interior shots. Tomorrow, Andrea and I are going to be doing the car-to-car shots where we drive our Cayenne and shoot the other car, where we drive back and forth, and then she drives the car back and forth while I shoot. So we'll be doing that. Thursday, I'm supposed to be looking at some vintage Porsches, which I'll share on the channel. Friday's the day that Andrea and I are going to do what we call our stand-ups in front of the car and in the chatting part of it. And then Friday afternoon, I will edit it all to put out for Saturday. So doing that. I got some odd jobs in doing around the house. I've got an old plum tree that's dead in the backyard. I just got my chainsaw sharpened, and I'm going to be taking that down. So yeah, odd jobs. I painted my son's bedroom. We changed a flat tire. Odd jobs. I'm going to probably power wash the deck. I just thought of that. I have to get around to doing that. Stuff like that. Odd jobs. And you know what? I travel so much usually. Okay, here's an example. I'm not sure how many of you are frequent flyers, but over the last 4 years, I have on average flown over 200,000 miles a year. An average person flies, if they're doing flights for work, 35 to 50,000 miles a year. I do 200,000 plus miles a year. Top flyers for airlines are about 100,000 miles. So I do 2 times what most top flyers do for an airline. So for me to be home is actually a nice treat. And there are certain things I'm doing around the house. So that's good. 4-cylinder Wrangler Sierra versus 6-cylinder is the best. Is it best to wait for the hybrid? No, I don't want you to think that there's going to be a real hybrid. It's going to be this 48 volt mild hybrid, which uses e-torque. So the 48 volt system is on the V6, the Pentastar, which gives you that initial launch torque, okay? So this is not like a hybrid, like a Prius or like the Pacifica. it's going to be mild 48 volt e-torque, and it only works for a very small fraction of a second to get the vehicle launched. So there you go. So the 6-cylinder with the e-torque would be one to consider. If I was buying a Wrangler, I'd get the diesel, because that low-end torque, especially if you're going off-roading, would be fantastic. Have you ever experienced European delivery of a car? What happens during the experience? I've never, but I kind of do know what happens. And I know this from Porsche, because, you know, everybody knows I love Porsches. So when you order say a Cayenne or a Panamera, you go to Leipzig, which is where the cars are made, and they have a Porsche experience center there, and you get to go and they deliver the car to you there. They have a nice little presentation for you. You get to tour around the facilities, and they even have a track there where it's not with your car, but they take you around the track. So that's something that you can do. And then you get the car insured for 2 weeks. You drive the car in Europe for the 2 weeks, and you take it to a destination, a port. Not sure exactly what the port is, in probably in northern Germany, and then it would get put on a container and shipped to your final destination. Often the European delivery was less expensive, but I'm not sure if that's changed with the way it works for insurance and those sorts of things. But I've always had a dream, ever since I was a little kid, that I would buy a brand new 911, and I would get to go to Zuffenhausen in Stuttgart, just outside of Stuttgart, watch the car come off the line, go to the presentation center, get the car, drive it for a couple of weeks through Europe, and then ship it home. Now that would be a pretty cool thing to do. All right, what do we have here? This is saying that there's a problem with the stream. Is it working okay? Let me have a look here. It's saying something is wrong with the stream. Can someone please type in if you're seeing it all right? Oh, I think it's saying it's fine now. Yeah, had a little bit of a trouble there. There seems to be something going on here. It's okay. Not syncing. Anybody else want to chime in there? Is it going? It's showing the stream strength is good. Good here. Okay. All right. That's good. Where was I? My window's closed, so I got to go to another backup here. Sorry about this, guys. I got to find where I was. What do you think of JD Power? Seems like every car has a JD Power award or something. It just seems like hot air at this point. I totally disagree with you. JD Power, in my opinion, is a much better indication than Consumer Reports. Consumer Reports, you got to remember, you're asking your readers, which typically are older men, to review their own personal cars. JD Power is anonymous. It goes to hundreds of thousands of randomly selected people, and they fill out the questionnaire and they send it back. They have no idea who they are. It's a broad spectrum of people. And what you see are the JD Power awards given out. Now, there are different ones. There's initial quality, that's in the first 90 days, which cars score the best. There's also dependability, that's cars that are 3 years old and how they're holding up. But there's also other awards that they do for desirability. And what they do is they come up with the data, and in order for a brand to use it in their marketing, they have to pay for it. So it's kind of like they build it, and then they see who comes. But I do like JD Power. I've done interviews with Dave Sargent from JD Power on my previous radio show many times, and I think that they actually have very good data. For SUV with muscles around 100,000, which would you recommend? BMW X5M, Jaguar F-Pace SVR, Mercedes-Benz GLE 63, or the Audi SQ8, or any others? I would think you want to look at a Cayenne Turbo in there as well. That would be one to consider. I think that the GLE, they're all nice. The new X5, I think, is a fantastic product. They did a really good job. The F-Pace is the oldest of the bunch in those now, and the interior, considering what you're paying for that car, isn't at the same level as the others. The SQ8, I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. The SQ8 is tuned to be too much of a good everyday car and not edgy enough. When you ratchet up all of the sportiness settings in it, you can make it feel like that, but I just wish it was more edgy. So for me, it'd probably be the Mercedes-Benz. Hello from Saudi Arabia. Hey, stop bidding with what is it, Russia, to get the price of oil down. We need the price of oil up here in Canada. Keep us employed. Just saw the new A7 on a walk this afternoon, and it's stunning. Is the A7 engine any good enough for sportiest driving, or would you suggest the S7? Yeah, it's a great engine. There's nothing wrong with it at all. S7 is always going to be better, more torque. I had a TDI A7, which had the same torque as the S7, so it was great for everyday situations, because what you use from light to light, traffic light to traffic light, everyday situations is torque. I have no problem suggesting the A7, S7, any variety of A7 at all. I think it's a fantastic car. But yeah, try it out, see if you like it. Hey, by the way, for our friend from Saudi Arabia, I'm not trying to beat up on you. I'm just joking around. Hey, Zach, any idea why we use liters per 100 kilometers and not kilometers per liter in Canada? I don't know why. That'd be a good question for Transport Canada and why they came up with that. It probably was standardized somewhere. Do you think Genesis is more the German luxury brand in a sense that they are leasing only cars, or more like Lexus where you can actually buy one? Leasing is a real luxury car phenomenon. Most people who have a luxury car, even if they can't afford to buy it outright, lease them. I'm going to sneeze here. Excuse me. Because they want to put their money to work doing something else. Why have $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 tied up in a car when you can just make a payment on it every month and that money could be invested in something else? So I don't think there is a Japanese versus a German versus a Korean model for how they sell cars. Most people that buy luxury cars lease them. So I don't think that's exactly true with Lexus. Do you think manufacturers will have a gentleman agreement not to produce engines greater than 1,000 horsepower? Remember when the 350Z or 350Z, 287 horsepower is all a person needs. Yeah, I mean, I remember, what's his name? I try to remember the former chairman of General Motors, Lutz. We were in a presentation at the Detroit Auto Show with Bob Lutz, and he said the average needs of an American is basically fulfilled with a Mitsubishi Galant, but is that what you want to drive? We don't really need anything other than little subcompact cars to get us to and from work and drop our kids at school. That's not what the auto industry is based on. The auto industry is based on aspirations, success, getting something nicer, having something nicer than your neighbor. Hey, look at me, I have this car and you don't. I'm more successful. That's basically what the whole industry is built on. I've got a car with a bigger engine. Mine's got an S on the back. Mine's got AMG. Mine says M. That's how the whole business runs. That's how they make all their money. It doesn't really cost them that much more to make those cars, incrementally more, but it's not for considering what they charge for them. I mean, if Mercedes could sell just AMGs and charge a premium for them, they make way more money than if they sold the base model. So that's really not what it's about. I don't think there is a gentleman's agreement. And I think with hybridization and electrification married with gasoline engines, getting to 1,000 horsepower one day probably will happen. Jack says, hi Jack from Vancouver. Can you talk about how would a normal car guy get into your field of car review auto journalism, and what does it take in terms of qualifications experience? Well, there's no straight line to doing what I do, and a lot of, if you ask 20 different auto journalists, they probably have 20 different answers about how they got there. But Jack, contact me through my website. Go to motormouth.ca and send me an email, and we can chat, and I can give you more information. There's no two ways of doing it. If you're interested in doing what I do, maybe you can come and help me out a little bit, and we'll see how that goes, okay? You can't look like a frog, though. You got to be a good-looking dude. You know, you can't be on camera. I'm joking. No, I'm not joking. Hey, Mr. Spencer, fuel economy is important to me, but don't want something too dull to drive. Equinox diesel versus RAV4 hybrid. The Equinox diesel is a fantastic product if you do a lot of highway driving. It isn't a powerful engine. It's a great engine if you just get it up to the speed limit and cruise along for 2-3 hours. For example, say you were somebody that drove a lot between Montreal and Toronto. Maybe you did that drive once a week. Then that would be a perfect car for that, because you're doing a lot of highway driving and you're not asking the engine to do a lot. It is not the most powerful engine. It's going to be efficient and it's going to give you great fuel economy. And I really do like the fact that they made that. The RAV4 is going to be a better everyday car, getting you from traffic light to traffic light, merging, all of that kind of stuff, because the electric motor in the RAV4 makes up for that sort of lack of bottom end grunt from the Atkinson cycle 4-cylinder. So I think everyday drivability, it would be the RAV4, and certainly for resale value, and the Equinox is a great car. If you do, say some people commute like 2-3 hours a day on the highway. That's what I would get. I would get a diesel for that. Same thing with the new Mazda CX-5 diesel. It would be perfect for somebody that puts on, like someone that does 40, 50,000 kilometers a year. That's who would buy that car. Hey, Zach, how would you compare BMW M430, 340, I should say, with Kia Stinger? With the price difference, I'm leaning towards Kia, but I heard the facelift version is on the way soon. Yeah, and it's not going to be major. I mean, they're not going to invest a huge sum of money into a low volume car. Stinger is not a high volume car. It was a halo car, and they accomplished what they wanted with that. It was like, wow, look what Kia made. And it still is a great looking car. Whenever I see it, I'm like, wow, because it kind of reminds me of my A7. It's much bigger than the BMW. If you're looking for just pure driving dynamics, there's no question it's the BMW. If you're looking for a touring car that's large, smooth, comfortable, big back seat, big trunk, and nicely finished and looks good, the Stinger's your answer. Excuse me. I would suggest that the BMW M340 is a better comparison with the G70, the Genesis, than the Kia, okay? And the facelift isn't going to be like a wholesale change. They're going to just do what that term means. They're going to update the look of it. Raging Soul. Hey, Zach. Hope you're well out in Van City. When do you think the 2021 3-row Atlas will be released in Canada? Do you really think it's better than the Pilot since it outsells it in Canada? The Atlas Ride and Drive event was in San Francisco, scheduled for the 3rd week of April. Of course, that got canceled, and that would signify the release of this vehicle into the marketplace. Typically, when they have a launch event, the vehicle is coming to market right around them within a very few short weeks. So I would suggest that the Atlas was due to arrive in May or June, and it's going to be facelifted to look like the Cross Sport front and back. Now, do I think it's better than the Pilot? Here's why I think the Atlas outsells the Pilot, okay? I truly believe that people buy in silos. People who are looking for a Pilot are also considering a Highlander. They're also considering a Pathfinder. They're maybe considering a Santa Fe. They're looking at import Asian 3-row utilities, okay? Maybe the Telluride and the Palisade would be in there as well. So the group of potential people that want sort of a Japanese or Asian import utility, they have lots to choose from. Then there's this other group of people that really would like to have a German 3-row utility. that is not a BMW, an Audi, or a Mercedes. There's only one car, and that's the Atlas. So that's why I think it sells so well, because it catches this whole group of German import intenders that now only have one vehicle to choose from. In addition to that, there's another complicating factor. There are people who can afford to buy an Audi Q7, can buy an X5, or can buy something else from one of the premium German brands, but they're saying to themselves, hey, instead of spending $75,000 on a nicely equipped Q7, why don't I get like the top of the line Atlas for $55,000? We save $20,000. It moves the kids around and the dog and all that kind of stuff, and save 20 grand. It's a German brand. It fills our needs on that front. I think that's why it outsells the Pilot. It's just it's a sales marketplace of one. Is it better than the Pilot? It's bigger than the Pilot. There's no question about it. The engine of the Atlas is bulletproof. It's been around for many, many, many years. It's the VR6 that's been used by the Volkswagen Group since the early 90s. It is going to deliver the mail every day. What it isn't good at is fuel economy. It likes more gas than the Pilot. The 8-speed automatic is proven as well. So there's some pluses for that for sure, but where it wins is on size. That was a long answer. Do you think Toyota will come out with a plug-in Highlander? I bet you they will. Okay, so Highlander, I was supposed to get the Highlander next week, and damn, they canceled it. I was looking forward to getting that. And we were going to do a comparison with Palisade. Highlander Palisade would have been a good shootout. Yeah, so look at RAV4. RAV4, RAV4 Hybrid, RAV4 Prime. And they have committed that they want to do this through their lineup. So it's a pretty good bet that probably about a year or so after there could be a plug-in version. Was watching your old Focus RS review. Looks like you were having fun with the drift mode. Yeah, that was a cool vehicle. I really enjoyed it. I like those little hot hatches. I like all kinds of vehicles. I like big cars. I like big sedans. There is nothing. Like, I grew up in an era where cars were huge. Like, the first car I learned to drive on was a 1972 Buick LeSabre. Huge. The doors were like 2 doors. And that's when people bought 2 doors. Huge doors, right? We had Chrysler New Yorker and vehicles like that. So I love driving big land yachts. I've owned 2 7 Series BMWs, but then I get into a little tiny car and I love those too. I love them all. So yeah, that's why I like to be, I'd be like Jay Leno if I had the money. I'd have a little bit of everything. But yeah, that little Focus RS was fun. Vehicles with diesel motor seems to cost more. With the higher cost for service, is it worth the hassle, especially in Canadian winters? Well, it depends on where you live. Like, if you're living somewhere where it's like ultra cold, like parts of the prairies where it gets down to minus 40 or 50, maybe not the best idea, because the diesel can basically coagulates at that low temperature. But for many urban centers across the country, they work quite well. They certainly are. Have we got problems with this again? I think it's, we're having a little bit of trouble with the connectivity. They certainly get much better fuel economy, okay? And it comes down to, once again, how much you are driving. If you're driving a lot, a diesel can be beneficial. And it also, if you have to look at if you're driving a car that requires premium fuel. The vehicle we drive is a perfect example. Almost all of the European diesels that were sold, all the gas versions all required premium gas, which is about 10 cents more per liter. And depending on where you live, diesel can be a lot less expensive. Where I live, diesel, for the most part, is less expensive than regular. And then when you add on the premium you would pay for premium fuel, it makes it much more worthwhile. Plus, the fuel goes about 25% further. So that's something to consider. It really comes down to what the alternative vehicle is. Eric says, my BMW 330 lease is up soon and the buyback is a lot higher than the comparable models found online. Any way to negotiate the residual value? Dealer better off not taking it back and sell it as a loss. Dealer better not. Okay, when you sign a lease, the end value of the lease is determined. Pick a round number. $40,000 BMW, after 3 or 4 years, it's agreed that the lease amount at the end is $20,000. So what you've paid for over those 3 or 4 years is $20,000 to use that car. Okay? If the marketplace is selling them for less than the $20,000, you give the car back. No questions asked. They take it. There's no extras they're going to charge you. You sign that contract that they agree to take that car back at the end of the lease for the set amount. If it's the other way around and the cars that are in the marketplace are selling for a whole lot more than your buyout, well, then you're sitting pretty. You can say to them, hey, let's roll some of that equity into a new car, or you can buy the car and sell it privately. So you're saying the lease is up and the buyback is a lot higher than the comparable models found online. Any way to negotiate residual value. Dealer better off not taking it back and sell at a loss. No, when you sign that lease contract, they have to take it back at the end of the lease. So look at your lease, whatever the lease value is, make sure the car is in good condition. They can come at you for curbed wheels, ripped leather, stains on the carpet. It can't look like a turd when you take it back. They can charge you excess wear and tear, but it would be the same if you sold it privately. If you sold a car privately, you'd have to get the wheels fixed, you'd have to get the carpet steamed, all that kind of stuff. So beware of that, dings and dents. So if there's any excess wear, you might get charged for that. But for the most part, you take the car, you drop it off, and you walk away, and it's done. So don't worry about it being worth less. I'll give you a perfect example. We had a BMW X5 with the 4.4 liter V8. And then all of these things came together at once. And they were the fuel crisis hit. What year was that? The fuel prices went crazy there for about a year. And everybody was dumping inefficient vehicles. And we had a 4.4 liter V8 X5. And so what happened was the values of those vehicles absolutely dropped down like a rock. Well, I had full intention of keeping the car or maybe buying it and selling it, hopefully for a little bit of a premium. But the residual values of those went into the toilet. So what I did is I just dropped the car off, and they had to then try and sell the car at their loss, not at mine. That's the great thing. What's one of the great things about leasing? 2020 GLS or X7. I actually like both of them depending on the engine. I think that the X7 with the V8 would be the way to go. But I have to say, the GLS that I drove, and Andrea was in the video, go and watch the review. The GLS, the inline 6-cylinder with that e-boost, the 48 volt system, worked really, really well. I like both of them. They both have air suspension. They both are available with 6-cylinder turbos or V8 turbos. I think that the 6-cylinder turbo inline 6-cylinder in the Mercedes with that added e-torque actually works a little bit better. They're both great. There's no wrong answer there. It seems like we keep getting some kind of intermittent freezing here with the stream. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say goodbye. Wait for it to start up again. Okay, it seems like I'm getting intermittent dropout with the signal here. So I think we're going to say goodbye. Thanks to everybody. I'll be back again on Thursday night. Hopefully the internet connection will be better and we won't have it dropping out like this. But I'll chat with you then. Okay? Everybody take care, and we'll see you on Thursday.